Alright, these are some thoughts I've had that I want to share with anyone, anywhere, protesting anything. I've begun to notice a certain pattern emerging in the way these protests take place, and unfortunately, many of them are misguided and inefficient. I want equality. I want it for all. I want an end to racism, to sexism, to homophobia, and many other things. And when I look at the protests and techniques being used to achieve these ends, I do not see them as having a positive effect. So I hope that you will take a moment and allow me to speak my mind, and I hope even more that you take something away from this little speech that may help you in the future. To begin, I want to say that everyone seems to think that we're in uncharted territory here, that what's going on has never happened before, and because of this, many are flailing around in the wind trying to discover just what needs to be done. However, this is just not true. We have been here before. Not only have we been here before, but we've been here many times before. We have a long history that we can look at and compare and contrast the different methods one can use to protest and see what effect each had, what worked, what failed, why. These are questions that everyone should be asking, and I think I may have found something very interesting down that path. But before I get to that, I want to let you know my opinions and my ideas about the process of protesting in and of itself. First, there are 4 reasons to protest. 1, to spread awareness about a problem. This can be calling a random phone number and talking to people, or this can be handing out flyers in the streets. This can be marching and shouting your message as a group through towns or cities. Either way, the goal is the same. There are people who do not know about the problem, so you want to make them aware of the problem. 2, to convince people who are aware of the problem but are not helping to help. This can mean hosting a meeting to discuss how to help and then inviting everyone you possibly can to attend, or it could be sending out hundreds of different people with clipboards, papers, petitions, anything out into neighborhoods looking for signatures and donations. After all, it's a well-known fact that kindness is contagious. If you get someone to help out in some small way, it's highly likely that they'll begin helping out in other small ways in other areas. But at the end of the day, your goal is simple. Get them engaged. Everyone may already know about the problem, so reason 1 would be meaningless here. You're not spreading awareness. They're already aware. What they don't do is care. So your job is to spread caring. Get them to care. Get them to want to help. Get them active. 3, to gain means or supplies. This is an easy one. Not all fundraising is by donations. For instance, high school students may have a bake sale and then use the money earned to buy things that they will use to protest later. However, this could also be getting a second job. You work 5 days a week, but then you start a weekend job for a little extra cash. Your job may have nothing to do with the cause at all, but the money you earn from it can go to the cause. Therefore, you go to work as a form of protest, because it will allow your protest to reach further, faster, and with more success. The 4th reason is to force your opponents into submission. Now, what I mean by this is, let's say there's a business that pays its female employees less than its male. So you go outside with signs and words and you hurt their business. You yell at customers as they enter. You threaten to never shop there again. If you work there, you threaten to quit. You organize a boycott. Whatever you do, your goal is clear. Put enough pressure on the company that they agree to no longer do what you feel is wrong, which in this case would have been paying the females less than the males. But there you have it. So if you want to protest something, whatever cause you're trying to help, take a moment to think about if what you're doing is at least one of these things. Some activities do all 4, some only 1. However, if your protest is none of these things, then your protest is worse than useless. It's actually hurting the cause. If you take time, money, and energy that could have gone towards something that results in success, and instead you put it towards something that achieves nothing, then you now have less time, less money, and less energy to spend on other means of achieving your goal. An example of this would be protests in which the strategy employed is to block traffic. While this could be good at causing a scene, and when people look towards the scene they hear your message, the fact of the matter is, for every protest I've seen this take place, everyone in the world was already aware of the problem and the protests about it. Some are actively engaged in helping, some are aware but aren't helping. Others don't believe that what's happening is even a problem. But one way or the other, they already know. Because of this, no message is being spread. You can't tell someone something they already know. Also, no one either watching the protest on TV or actually in a car being stopped is going to decide to help out because of it. They're only going to be made more aggravated. So this protest spreads no message and gains no allies. Also, they're not earning any money or supplies that can be used at a later date. nor are they harassing anyone that has any kind of say over the problem you're fighting against. You picket a business to change that business. You can't picket a baker on one side of town and expect to have changes made at a clothing store on the opposite side of town. When you protest against a random sample of the general population, the people who have the ability to implement the changes you want made aren't there. Therefore, you're putting no pressure on them to make any changes. Nothing is achieved. If you want to protest police brutality, you go to the police and you protest. If you want to protest homophobic laws, you go to the lawmakers and you protest. But the general public, you want to make allies of them, and you do not harass those you want to be your allies. Now, earlier I mentioned that there was a roadmap of sorts that could be applied here. While this is correct, I'm not going to give you the whole story. It's important for people to do their own research and come to their own opinions. So all I'll say on this subject is to look at the various groups of history and see what they did. Because there have been many successful cases of outside groups being treated horribly only to become fully accepted as members of society. The first two of the groups I'm going to cite that you should look into more are the Irish and the Italians. The whole idea of quote-unquote white people being a singular group is a very recent phenomenon. Up until only a few decades ago, they were not. The KKK and other various white power groups hated the Irish almost as much as they hated any of the other cultures that you know they hate today. Both of these groups were commonly thought of as being drunken, dirty, poor, dishonest, lazy criminals and gangsters who came to America to take advantage of the good, hardworking citizens through violence, intimidation, living off the government, and were being helped by underground criminal societies. Does that sound familiar? Because it sounds to me like every other stereotype applies to every other person that is being discriminated against. Muslims, black people, Mexicans, all of them, every one of them has that exact same stereotype that those people had back then. But if you look at them now, they're just another part of the collective known as white people. Go look up their history. See what they did to assimilate. See what worked, what failed, how long it took. Everyone remembers the whites-only signs of Jim Crow, but many have no idea that Irish need not apply was put up in many storefronts looking for workers. But look at them now, like I said. Just more white people. They assimilated some way, and they didn't abandon their culture to do it. Now, I want to talk about that third group, the main point to this. I want to talk about the group that I believe is the absolute best example of assimilation and the greatest and most powerful journey of equality that I can find. And this are the gays. Now, when I say this, I don't mean emotionally powerful. I mean the sheer movement from where they were to where they are, and the time it took them to get there is the fastest, smoothest, and cleanest path to equality I can even imagine. It only even started becoming legal to be homosexual as recent in 1962. And that's here in America. 1962. And that was just the start. Only a few states was it safe to be gay. And in those that it was unsafe, I don't mean a homophobic asshole might beat you up. I mean the police would arrest you and you would go to jail. In fact, one thing I learned doing a little bit of research for this paper was that Thomas Jefferson wrote a law making the punishment for men having sex with each other castration. And that was rejected for being too liberal. Instead, they gave them death. And this continued up until 1962, with some states' punishments still being death, and others just very long prison sentences. 1962. My father was born in 1960. And in 1962, they didn't legalize it. They just lowered the punishment in some states. 1962. World War II ended in 1945, and homosexuals were still being arrested and killed for the government for nothing more than being gay. That is what it was like to be gay at the time. Now think about what it was like to be black, or a woman, or a Jew, or a Muslim, or anything else at that time. Then whatever group you picked, look at them today. Look at the gays today. In a span of a little over 50 years, homosexuals went from literally being killed by the government to being prominent on TV, movies, getting into elected offices. They can get married, adopt children. In fact, being a homophobe can make you into an outcast. I literally knew someone who took issue with gay people, but he was very secretive about it because anytime he brought it up, everyone around him would get mad at him. He actually talked to me about it. He told me about how he felt marginalized. He told me about how he should have the right to have and express his feelings without being shunned for it. That he's tired of having to hide how he feels out of fear of punishment or being ostracized. I tried to get him to understand the irony of what he was saying, but I don't think I succeeded. However, that's not what this is about. What this is about is learning from other people, looking at what others have done and learning how to better yourself through them. And so it is the journey that the homosexuals took. I want to aim this lesson because they were perhaps the last group to begin fighting for equality and one of the first ones to come close to achieving it. The fight for gay rights began its first major steps decades after women could vote, and only started to gain momentum at the same time that black people were putting an end to the last legalized forms of discrimination. However, despite all that, it has come just as far, arguably even farther than any of the other groups fighting for equality. So much so that now the movement is barely about homosexuality at all. They moved on to their individual subgroups, the main one now being transgendered people as the focal point of their fight, and already we have trans legislators, literally, openly transgendered members of government. Within less than the lifespan of a single middle-aged man, they went from being murdered by the government to holding offices within government. The LGBT community has one of the most successful campaigns for equality and therefore is one that should definitely be looked to for studies and insight. And to take a moment to return to my 4 reasons to protest, they zeroed in with laser precision onto one of them: gaining allies. While of course they did the other 3 things as well, nearly all of their efforts went to making allies. Never, except for the most extreme of the extremists, which the overwhelming majority of the community openly disagrees with, never considers straight people to be their enemy. Many feminists see themselves as fighting men. Many Muslim rights groups see themselves as fighting Christianity. But the gay rights groups were never antagonistic towards straights. They were very vocal about this to the point of having "and allies" as practically part of their slogan. I remember hearing about community events organized by gay people so that gay high schoolers could have a safe place to party. It was basically a school dance. There was food, music, drinks, other such things, but it gave the gay high schoolers a place to go that they didn't have, where they can just dance and enjoy themselves and party without having to look over their shoulder or worry about anything. They could just have fun. And every single sign for this dance, every flyer, poster, advertisement, tweet, whatever, they all proclaimed the dance as being for LGBTQ and friends, LGBTQ and allies. It wasn't a gay dance for gay people. It was a dance for people, with the idea that no matter what kind of person you wanted to dance with, you could. Go to a gay bar. Go. They have zero issue with straight people being there. I may not be straight myself, but I know I definitely look it. And no one has ever given me so much as a funny look. And I've met many people who were actually straight in these bars. There is no exclusion, only inclusion. Everything about their protests were welcoming to allies. Everything about everything they've ever done was about building relationships with heterosexuals. There was no with us or against us mentality. When they got themselves on TV, the shows weren't based around "we're gay, look how we suffer, straight people need to do something." They were just characters who did the same things that the shows about straight people did, but about gays. They weren't political or aggressive or in your face beyond the simple fact that they were gay. Ellen DeGeneres doesn't host a gay talk show for gay people. She hosts a talk show for talk show viewers. They sought out friends everywhere. They made allies of everyone. And then when it came time to march, everyone came with them. And when everyone marches up to the government's door, you can't write them off so easily. So please, take a moment to listen to what the successes of the past have to teach us. We are fighting a battle that's been fought and won before. There have been victories, there have been defeats. Some major, some minor. But by paying attention to what's been done, we can better chart a path for our future. And to me, there's no clearer evidence of what to do. Make friends. Your friends and allies are your greatest strength in your fight for equality and acceptance. Nothing is more important to any social movement than the friends of that social movement. Build alliances. Open yourself up to people who are different than you. Be kind when others are not. Women did not earn the right to vote by defeating men. Black people did not end Jim Crow by defeating white people. Gays did not defeat straights. In the war against oppression, you do not win by defeating your enemy. You win by converting your enemy into an ally.